Our next writer is Olga Grjasnowa. Olga Grjasnowa was born in Baku, Azerbaijan, and emigrated with her parents to Germany when she was 11. She's also lived in Poland, Russia, and Israel. Olga's first novel, All Russians Love Birch Trees, was nominated for the German Book Prize and won the Anna Segers and the Klaus Michael Kühne Prize. It was just published here by New Vessel Press in Eva Bacon's translation, which Tizzy will read today, and named by O Magazine one of the 10 titles of 2013 that will broaden your point of view. The narrator, Masha, fled Baku with her family for Germany when she was a child, not long after the 1990 January pogrom against the Armenians. Getting a foothold in Frankfurt has been easier for Masha than for her parents, but she still finds it hard to establish some kind of peace between her traumatic experiences and traumatic memories and her new country. Aspiring to be a UN interpreter, she is busy mastering 5 languages and resisting the stereotypes everyone around her is eager to ascribe to her. When Masha's boyfriend dies suddenly and unexpectedly from incompetent medical treatment, his death awakens traumatic memories from her past in Baku. Masha leaves for Tel Aviv, hoping to make sense of the loss, but finds that the urge to label others there is more aggressive than it had been in Frankfurt. The fact that she is Jewish and speaks Arabic but no Hebrew blows everyone's mind, and unfortunately her computer.
Thank you. And hello. Meine Cousine kam etwa 40 Minuten später, fiel mir um den Hals und war wunderschön. Mein Anruf hatte sie direkt aus dem Bett ihres neuen Regisseurs geholt, wie sie mir augenblicklich berichtete. Hanna war eine Nichte meiner Mutter. Allerdings waren wir eine weit verzweigte Familie mit unklaren Verwandtschaftsgraden. Und meine Mutter konnte sich weder Namen noch Gesichter sonderlich gut merken. Also waren alle, die kein eigenes Geld verdienten, nicht nur die Neffen, die Rentner, Onkel und Tanten und der Rest bestand aus Cousinen. Um sie besser auseinanderzuhalten, vergab Mutter ihren Verwandten insgeheim Nummern. Hanna war die Nichte Nummer 5 und ihre Mutter war die Cousine Nummer 13, aber da war Mutter unschlüssig. Ich kannte meine Verwandtschaft, vor allem von Fotos, die uns regelmäßig geschickt wurden. Besonders traurig waren die Fotos von Familienfeiern. Meine Tanten hatten noch immer ein bröckelndes Lächeln im Gesicht. Ihre Männer aber gaben sich nicht mehr die Mühe und schauten niedergeschlagen in die Kamera. Auf den Tischen vor ihnen stand das aus der UdSSR mitgebrachte Geschirr. Hanna hingegen war stets das auffallend hübsche Mädchen vor spektakulären Motiven. Das Tote Meer, Jerusalem, der See Genezareth, die Wüste. Hanna hatte ich nie richtig kennengelernt. Zuletzt hatten wir uns vor 7 Jahren gesehen, als ihre Eltern in Deutschland Urlaub machten. Es war ein kurzer, unaufgeregter Urlaub. Ihre Eltern hatten damals ein Auto gemietet und fuhren die iranischen Schlösser und vergessene Synagogen ab. Meine Mutter war fest entschlossen, ihnen zu beweisen, dass man in Deutschland als Jude leben konnte. Nach Elias Tod hatte Hanna angefangen, mich regelmäßig anzurufen, abends zwischen 10 und 11, nachdem meine Mutter gegangen war. Wir verstanden es, einander nicht zu nahe zu kommen, keine unangenehmen Fragen zu stellen oder ehrliche Antworten zu erwarten. Wir redeten nicht über Elias Tod und auch nicht über Hannas Tochter. Mach doch Aliyah, sagte sie. Auf gar keinen Fall, sagte ich. Ich gebe doch nicht die deutsche Staatsbürgerschaft auf. Okay, dann komm wenigstens für eine Weile. Es wird dir gefallen. Ein paar Monate später, auf dem Parkplatz des Ben-Gurion-Flughafens, schlug mir feuchtwarme Luft entgegen. Ich fühlte mich wie in den Tropen. Plötzlich freute ich mich, hier zu sein. Ich freute mich auf die Arbeit und darüber, dass mein Leben vielleicht noch nicht ganz vorbei war. Hanna ließ nicht vom Gaspedal ab. Hinter uns blinkten die roten und gelben Lichter des Flughafens. So habe ich dich gar nicht vorgestellt, Entschuldigung, sagte Hanna und zündete sich eine Zigarette an. Du siehst mir gar nicht ähnlich. Ich dachte, du würdest mir ähnlich sehen. Nein, ich habe es nicht gedacht. Ich habe es gehofft. Ich habe gehofft, du würdest mir ähnlich sehen. Die sind doch nur Cousinen. Ja, aber du siehst nicht so aus. Wie denn? Jüdisch. Findest du? Hanne nickte und sah wieder auf die Straße. Überhaupt nicht? Fragte ich sie. Nein. Ich musterte mich heimlich im Rückspiegel. Wirklich nicht? Tut mir leid. Schon gut. Habe ich dich getroffen? Nein. Ich lachte auf, laut und hysterisch.
We had passed a small checkpoint surrounded by flower beds. Male Adumim was in the middle of the desert on a hill from which you could, and certainly also should, see all the way to Jordan. A young soldier waved us by with her gun, yawning. And then there we were in the middle of a neat suburb. Flower beds, preschools, synagogues, a shopping center, and clean white houses with red tiled roofs and white water tanks. Boys sat at the bus stop, legs apart, scratching their balls. The Arab villages that Hannah and I passed on our way from Jerusalem to Male Adumim had flat roofs and black water tanks. Sami and Shem had thrown their hands up in horror when the radio talked about Israeli settlement policy. Alicia had stayed out of it, had rolled joints or cooked, always with fast, precise movements to signal that it wasn't worth starting a fight because dinner or lunch was almost ready. Male Adumim was one of the largest settlements in the West Bank. My relatives weren't settlers who dreamt of biblical borders. When they'd arrived in Israel in 1990 as part of a big wave of immigrants, there was little housing space. To buy an apartment, they had to take on a mortgage for the next 25 years. Since they spoke only Russian, they didn't understand the concept of a settlement. By the time they'd figured it out years later, it was already too late. They had lived through the Gulf War, and their kids served in the army. We parked directly in front of the house. At the door, Hannah entered the security code 1234, and we went in. The stairway was bright and smelled of animals. Aunt number 13 had a childhood in the Soviet Union under her belt and was now a woman with heavy bags under her eyes, varicose veins, and smeared makeup. She was into bird watching. She shared the photos she took of rare species with the other bird watchers on the internet. Her husband, my uncle, was still good looking. He was small in stature and had a flattering smile. We were immediately sent off to the bathroom to wash our hands, and then they sat us down at the table. The latter was set with crystal glasses and porcelain from Soviet factories. "Do you like Israel?" Aunt number 13 asked. I said that I did. "Everyone who doesn't have to live here says that," my uncle countered promptly. Just like my father, he bore a grudge against Jews. "You don't love your family," said the aunt, fixing him with a cold stare. "What is that supposed to mean, I don't love my family?" "Well, if you loved us, you wouldn't say things like that." "Everyone here believes the whole world hates them. It's the only thing people can agree on. The world hates the Jews," my uncle said. "And you? Hypocritically eating your soup here? What do you think would happen if the folks at your newspaper were to find out that you live in a settlement? You poison everything with your leftist demagoguery. You don't even love your family." My uncle grinned and said to my aunt, "But I do love you." "In Berlin, they now advertise the Jewish Museum on milk cartons," I said, because I couldn't think of anything else. "We made it onto the milk carton. We're getting somewhere," Hannah said dryly. My aunt giggled, but then she turned toward Hannah and snarled at her. "When was the last time you saw your daughter?" "My mother thinks you've got to take the first thing that comes along and stick with it for life. By myself, I'm worthless to her. I've got to have a husband and take care of my child. As you can see, Soviet thinking patterns are hard to erase. She misses my husband more than I do." Hannah rolled her eyes and left the room. "Where are you going?" my aunt yelled after her. "To the bathroom," Hannah shouted and left me alone with her parents. "She has too much of a temper. No man could stand that for long," my aunt mumbled. The lunch dragged on. My aunt had prepared almost every dish she knew. She gave everyone a generous portion and didn't wait until it had been eaten to force seconds and thirds upon us. Hannah didn't come back from the restroom. My uncle encouraged my aunt. Masha is too shy to help herself. No, she's worried about her weight, said Aunt number 13, as she unloaded more chicken legs onto my plate. I asked myself whether the impulse to drown the following generation in food had more to do with the Caucasus mentality or the Holocaust legacy of my grandmother. My grandmother and her little brother had arrived, starved, in Baku. They were the only surviving members of their family. For the rest of her life, she remained concerned that we wouldn't have enough to eat, and every meal in the house was a feast. I think she'd been the one to introduce hedonism into our family. She had tried to instill in her daughters the philosophy of living every day as if it were their last. Nothing was postponed until tomorrow. No purchase, no feast, no caress. My grandmother had voted for Rabin because he resembled my grandfather and died 2 months after Rabin's assassination.